Before we get started here, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. Once you go through the content on the channel, you're going to see a lot of other great repairs just like the video that I'm doing today. So if you subscribe, you're going to be the first ones to see this great content popping up on YouTube. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button. On today's video, I'm going to be replacing the piston as well as the piston rings on a Stihl 260 chainsaw. The reason I'm doing this is because the saw was having blow-by. And if you guys are unfamiliar with what blow-by is, it's basically where the rings are not sealing against the cylinder wall. So when the spark plug ignites the fuel in the combustion chamber, it ends up blowing by the rings instead of pushing the piston down. So why not replace the piston if you're replacing the rings? You're already inside there. So I just went ahead and did everything for this customer. I inspected the cylinder. The cylinder's in great shape, so we're reusing that. But you might as well replace the piston if you're doing the rings by the time you have everything torn down. It just makes sense. If you take off the muffler and you inspect the exhaust side of the piston, you can clearly see that the piston has wear on it. The wear that I'm talking about, you should see horizontal machine marks on that piston from the factory. Once those horizontal machine marks are gone, it's usually a sign that there's some piston wear. When there's piston wear, it means there's ring wear too. And once you get enough of that wear, it's not sealing up tight against that cylinder wall, hence the reason why we're replacing this today. And how you tell if the saw is having these problems. A lot of people think it's carburetor related. They start adjusting the carburetor, trying to get the saw to work. But in this case, this mimics the same type of problems that you would have with the carburetor, except it's piston related. When the customer runs the saw, they can get it started. If they're holding down the throttle, as soon as they take the finger off the throttle, they end up going flat on their face. So it's not able to idle. So before you start throwing parts at it and getting a new carburetor, I would highly recommend taking the muffler off and inspecting the piston. So with that, let's jump right into the video and I'll show you guys how it's done.
Start by removing the air filter and shroud. The shroud comes off with this one screw. Before you move the spark plug, twist it side to side first before you start prying on it, otherwise you can take the contact spring off as well. These two aluminum screws hold on the air filter. Underneath the air filter, there's two nuts that hold the carburetor on. Use a 12mm tool to take the nuts off. I'll have one of these in the description. Empty the fuel before taking the carburetor off. If you don't, your tank's going to still be pressurized and spray fuel when you disconnect the line. In order to remove the throttle lever, you got to take off the screw on the bottom which holds on the handle. Once the throttle's disconnected, the carburetor will pop right out of place. Next, remove this metal ring, as well as this metal ring. Now you can push your rubber manifold boot through. 4 cylinder bolts hold on the cylinder. Remove those 4 cylinder bolts and then you can take the cylinder off. The gasket's in good shape, so we'll reuse that and we're going to inspect the cylinder. In order to remove the piston, you're going to have to take the circlip off. I have a prying tool right here. Just stick it in there and pop it out. Once you get the circlip off, take the wrist pin and push it all the way through so that way you can take the piston off. No scoring on this piston, but there is significant wear, so the rings are wore down and that was causing the issues with the blow-by. Lubricate the needle cage and put it back in the arm. I just use a heavyweight grease here. Now I'll take the new piston out of the box. Inside the piston there's a little package. This package has a new wrist pin as well as circlips. And with most Stihl OEM pistons, they will have the rings on there already. I use press fluid to lubricate the wrist pin. Press fluid is just a lightweight oil, something you could even use as like a WD-40 on there. You just want something to reduce the friction so that way it can pass through into the piston and get it installed. I'm going to use a screwdriver to press in the wrist pin the rest of the way so I can attach the circlip. Here's my circlip tool. It's got a magnet on one end. I put the circlip on there. I insert it into this cone shape, push it through to the end so it's launched in there. And then I go ahead and take the rounded end and set it inside there. And once it's lined up with the hole, I snap it into place. And then I just take a screwdriver to double check my work to make sure it's seated properly and then run to the next step. This red plate is a piston block to keep the piston from going down in the crankcase. I use more press fluid on the top. Notice this little dot right here on the piston. That is where your rings go around. So you do not want to compress your rings unless the gap is between there. Once both rings are aligned with the pins, go ahead and put the ring clamp on, get the cylinder in place, and then slightly push it down and release the clamp at the same time. So that way your cylinder can slide right over your rings. Now with the cylinder in place, we can remove the ring clamps as well as the piston block. Go ahead and push your cylinder down all the way to the crankcase. Before you attach the cylinder bolts, make sure you push your manifold through back into the carburetor housing area. You can do this two ways. Grab on with needle nose pliers like I'm doing right here. Otherwise, you can attach a rope and pull the rope through the hole. If you're using needle nose pliers, make sure you guys do not put a hole in this. Otherwise, you will not have a working saw when you're done. I use tweezers to set the cylinder bolts into place. This is the easiest way to do it without dropping them. Once your bolts are in place, make sure that you have your gasket lined up, and then you go around in a circular pattern, tightening these down. Don't tighten them all the way at once. You want everyone to have a thread started before you impact them all the way down. Now install your throttle lever on your choke and put your handle back together. And reattach the fuel line. Don't forget to install the nuts before you put the air filter back on. And go ahead and put the muffler back on. There's 2 screws that hold it on from the inside, and there's 4 screws that hold it on from the outside. Reattach the recoil. Top off the fuel, and let's get it back outside and see if we can get this thing started.
As you can see in the video, not very hard project to do. If you've never done these before, the biggest thing that you have to worry about is the circlips. The circlips are a little bit of a pain to do. I have a circlip tool from Stihl. You can order these from your local Stihl dealer. They come in 3 different sizes. You got the 10, 11, and 12. So depending on which size circlips you're using, you're going to need to get the right tool to fit those circlips. As you can see by the piston, it just had honest wear. So nothing neglected on this saw. Just over time, after you run it for a while, eventually you're going to have to replace parts, and this just happens to be one of the parts you have to replace. Thanks for watching the video. If you guys haven't already, make sure you guys drop a like down below and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate you guys watching the video. So I did include some of the tools that I use in the project. If you check the description down below, I list a lot of those tools on my Amazon affiliate links. If you guys want to support the channel, that's a great way to do so by making your purchase. Otherwise, snag some great tools that'll help you with your repair projects in your shop. So thanks for watching. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day.